All right, Ezra chapter 4, let's again call this one structure, but this time subtitle it The Adversaries, because at the end of chapter 3, we saw those from the children of Israel who had returned from exile effectively rebuild the foundation of the temple, offering up thanks in the form of a mix of shouts of praise and weeping for those who were among the older set among them who remember what it was like to get carted off into captivity and what it was like to have a homeland before exile. It seems like whether or not they are purely at a point of joy or their joy is mixed with the sadness of all they've been through. The shouts are a mix of weeping and rejoicing, which is going to get the attention of their neighbors who are going to be upset that Israel has not only moved back, but they've moved back and they are doing well. And the Bible warns about the various faces of adversaries, and these adversaries are not going to present as openly hostile. They're actually going to present as friends, asking to help in building or rebuilding the temple, to which the leaders of Israel are going to be wise in responding, no, this is something we need to do on our own. And that is going to expose the true motives of those who approach them offering to help, because then they are going to try to frustrate the work on the temple. And then they are ultimately going to undermine their cause to the king of Persia at this point, who is overseeing or has control over the territory. And they're going to get him to issue what we would call an injunction to stop work, not a verdict. And that seems to be wise, because at this point we have seen them carted off, meaning the children of Israel carted off into Babylonian captivity. But by the time Cyrus rises, he is actually king of Persia, who has taken over control from Babylon, having overthrown Babylon by this time. And we're going to see a difference seemingly between the ways in which the Chaldeans or the Babylonians ruled and the ways in which the Persians ruled, reminding me of a verse in Proverbs 18, verse 17, which reads, "The first person to speak always seems right until someone comes and asks the right questions." That's the easy to read version. The ESV reads, "The one who states his case first seems right until the other comes and examines him." And the wisdom of the king to which the people of the land appeal for the injunction is that he does issue an injunction and not a verdict that all work needs to stop. See, because what that gives him is the opportunity to look further, or at least pause until another king can look further into the issue. And that's exactly what's going to happen. And that reminded me of two things. One, that's the wisdom of King Cyrus to put his desire to help Israel resettle into an edict or a written proclamation that is now necessary to ensure that they can continue building beyond his reign as king. That's exactly what it is going to do in the next chapter. But before we get there, we don't get there if the current king Artaxerxes makes a snap decision after hearing one perspective and issues a ruling in the case, as opposed to, as we said, something that's more along the lines of a temporary injunction. And so even though he pauses the progress in Israel, he's at least prudent enough to leave the door open for further investigation, reminding me as a practical matter, I am still shocked to the degree that I am willing to fly off the handle with half of the information. And it seems that getting into the habit of something we mentioned before, and that's either fact-checking or having the courage to actually go to the other party in a dispute to find out more of what actually happened, is a discipline that I have to get into, as opposed to an intuitive thing that I just naturally do. Because sometimes it's just easier to listen to a single perspective, especially when it's consistent with what I already want to believe. But the wisdom of King Artaxerxes and the kings of Persia is that over the next few chapters, they are going to seem to have a consistent habit of going back to consulting the royal archives to find out whether or not the things they are being told are actually true, which seems to be an interesting contrast to the Chaldeans and the Babylonians, which in later books are going to be described as people who simply did whatever they wanted. And so it's an interesting thing to see the way in which God designed the captivity, or Israel being taken captive by people who simply did whatever they wanted. But he's having Israel resettled by the Persians, a group of people who seem to have a high value for the rule of law and a consistent practice of consulting the laws before simply making snap decisions that could possibly prevent Israel from being rebuilt at all. Which reminds me again of Proverbs 18:17, which says, "The one who states his case first seems right until the other comes and examines him." God, please deliver us from the temptation to make judgments too soon without hearing all that we need to hear.